Hello, lovely listeners. Welcome to the New Story podcast with me, your host, Rebecca Conran. I'm a certified trauma-informed holistic health coach, energy healer, astrologer, and published writer on the topics of spirituality and esoteric arts. And this is your monthly Astro Roundup, where we're going to talk about the collective energies coming in and the themes to be paying attention to. I have set the theme of a healing threshold for June, and it definitely carries the energy of standing at a crossroads between old emotional survival patterns and a new way of being human. And it is a tough time for us. We've got some major transits of both Jupiter and Chiron will be shifting gears, shifting energy, and Mercury will be stationing retrograde at the end of the month. And in between, we've got the usual suspects happening, some of our personal planets shifting. So much of this month is going to revolve around the tension between fear and possibility. So, where do we close down versus where do we remain open? Where do we remain hopeful versus how we integrate past suffering and past experiences? Where we spiral mentally versus where we consciously choose growth. So, there's a lot of major healing transits activating throughout the month. And many people are going to feel emotional, exposed, uncertain, confronted with long-standing wounds around their identity, their safety, their love, ability to feel loved or be loving, and their purpose. But beneath all of this intensity is an opportunity to rebuild from a more conscious foundation. So it's very important that we stay present, we don't give up, and we try to rise to the occasion of being human. We begin June with Mercury entering Cancer on the first day of the month, and the challenge of this placement of our minds and our communication in the sign of Cancer is learning how to honor our emotional truth without allowing fear or defensiveness or past experiences to distort our reality. One of the key phrases here is feelings aren't facts. They can inform us of material that we're holding in our psychology, in our personality, in our subconscious, but it doesn't always paint a clear picture of what reality is just because we're feeling a certain way. And while we need to honor our feelings, we need to also be checking in with, is this really what's happening? Is this really reality? Or am I triggered by something in my historical memory bank that needs my empathy and emotional intelligence and compassion right now? So there is the ability to perceive more of what's being unsaid. It's very intuitive time, but it can make objectivity difficult. So we want to be very discerning and understand that sometimes our reactions are being filtered through our emotional experience rather than logic. Between June 4th and June 10th, Mercury is then going to square both Saturn and Neptune, both in Aries. And so that's reactivating the tension side of the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which I've been speaking about quite a lot over the last 6 months or so. Mercury square Neptune can create some confusion, projection, misinformation. So June 4th is going to be a day when communication could feel very clouded. Many may feel very exhausted around mentally trying to process situations because they just cannot find clarity on this day. Mercury square Saturn, a few days after, brings the pendulum swinging in the opposite direction, though. There'll be some harsh realities, some difficult conversations happening. We might feel overly self-critical or pessimistic. There can be kind of some mental heaviness, like we're stuck in our limitations mentally. Together, these transits are really asking us to balance our intuition with groundedness, to be emotionally sensitive, but also be accountable to ourselves around it. We're learning to not collapse into our illusions, and also, hopelessness. We don't want to collapse into that either. We want to find that balance where we can integrate our connection with our intuition, and also stay in reality and do the work that needs to be done, putting one foot in front of the other to accomplish our goals right now. June 11th, the moon is going to be in Aries, and that happens every month. It's not a new thing. But it's going to conjunct Chiron at the anaretic degree of Aries, so the very last degree before Chiron shifts. So we're feeling deeply this precipice of healing. When the moon conjuncts Chiron, it creates this super powered planet, this super powered energy just for that moment on June 11th. And it can be quite intense with Aries, you know, a lot of issues around who am I? What does the world want from me? What is my purpose? These are all coming to a head. And healing right now is really coming through a lot of rock bottom difficulty, conflict, and crisis. The crisis is the breakthrough. So, you know, it takes effort to conduct ourselves with integrity, with compassion, with kindness, to be gentle, and to not project our deeper psychological matters onto the world around us, onto our friends and family and loved ones. But that is the work of the conscious being. This is not an easy time, but it's no time to give up. You know, be a contender in the game of life. And to do so, we have to really rise to the challenges. And the challenges for us humans are definitely psychological and emotional. But we come from a long line of survivors. Every human that was able to procreate, and they were survivors. You know, this is a fragile state, being human, for many reasons. Even just our physical survival is very intense, but we've come from people who did survive. They forged onward. They found a way, and that's in our DNA for us to be able to do that too. And now we have so many other skills. We've got logic, we've got empathy, and we can find our way through. But I think one very important thing is to find community and to be talking to people and sharing with people, and not delving into the isolationist tendencies that our society profits from. Feel your feelings, sit with your grief, but don't tell a story of how what you've experienced in your suffering is all you deserve or all that will ever be. And this is going to become very clear on June 13th, when Venus in Cancer squares Chiron in Aries before entering Leo. So Venus in Cancer has been all about cultivating the energy of mother, loving ourselves and others by protecting, nurturing, and nourishing, first of all, ourselves and then one another. But in conflict, in tension with Chiron on June 13th, it can show issues with these mothering themes. So anger towards abusive or absent caregivers can be running the show emotionally and mentally. Sometimes it's blocking us from being able to open our hearts because we're staying in a state of defensiveness, afraid that we might be hurt again. And this state really holds us back from receiving the love that we long for. So we're having to really come up against those challenges and break those walls down. You know, the suffering that you've experienced, it's not all that will ever be. It's not true, because you hold the key to not repeating the pain of the past in your conscious choices today. When Venus enters Leo, we're going to enter into this period where more courage around love can be found. Venus in Leo reminds us that love is not meant to live hidden behind walls of self-protection forever. And then this transit is going to ask us to really reconnect with joy, reconnect with that inner child in a very playful and sweet and loving and fun way. It also does bring in some romance and creativity, because we are just driven towards more heartfelt self-expression. There is definitely a desire to be seen and heard with Venus in Leo. And a healthy Venus in Leo energy teaches us that vulnerability can coexist with dignity and self-respect. So this is a time to be affectionate and generous and be willing to create beauty, even if you've experienced disappointment. The new moon in Gemini on June the 15th brings new, fresh perspectives and questions. Many times we feel really desperate to have our answers to the questions that are burning within us from the universe or from God or from spirit or from self. But are you asking the right questions? So Gemini here invites us to loosen our grip on our fixed narratives and become willing to see life from another angle. Gemini energy here helps us to cultivate mental spaciousness. And that way we can say, what stories am I repeating unconsciously? What assumptions do I make that need questioning? What perspectives have I not yet considered? And sometimes when we realign that perspective, that's when we allow for the flow of answers to come in. The biggest transit of the month, I think, by far, is Chiron's entry into Taurus. But first, we've got to be at that final degree of Aries, which we call the anaretic, which is very much a release degree. It's sort of the full moon degree of a planet when it's at the last degree of an energy. So all month long, reaching an apex on June 18th, we can get stuck in these anaretic degree of Aries loops, which have to do a lot with what went wrong, what doesn't work, my selfhood is hopeless, my identity is wrong. You know, there's a real like exaggerated pessimism to the final degree of Aries. And so I'll be frank about the meaning here. You need to not let yourself fall into a pit of awfulness in your mind. You know, you need to really get yourself out of those awfulness inducing mental loops. Everything is not shit. The world does not need to be condemned. Nothing is unchangeable. Just because something has happened before doesn't mean it's going to happen again, doesn't mean it's going to go on forever. Life is not hopeless. And, you know, even though at this time, because we're gaining so much maturation and wisdom from understanding our wounded identity more, it can feel like the wounded identity is the only thing available to us, but it isn't. And I think if you surround yourself with people who are pioneers, people who willingly look difficulty in the face and they say, I think I can change that. I think I can change myself. I think I can shift something here. You want to be around those people. Look for those willing to change themselves as your support systems and mentors right now, and really band together in a brotherhood, sisterhood of man, and share more and be more in an intimate space with one another. But this also means not just looking for people to talk to, but looking to listen to people as well and having this shared experience. It's very, very life affirming. I really recommend it. So we're going to be back at the Aries crisis degrees of Chiron September 19th because of Chiron's retrograde period. So all the better to take advantage of the potentials that are offered to us when Chiron enters Taurus and the healing tone shifts quite a bit. The beginning degrees of any sign have a lot of potential to them. They have a lot of newness. So these first degrees of Taurus are going to feel like there's more potential available to us. And the healing tone is going to be all about what helps us to feel safety and value within. So this is a transit that offers us an opportunity to build a healthier foundation, rooted in embodied self-worth, nervous system healing, emotional grounding, and sustainable forms of abundance. So collectively, Chiron and Taurus, on a whole, for the years that it's going to be there, it's going to shift the focus away from identity and independence themes that Chiron in Aries had us really working through, and towards questions of trust and open-heartedness and stability. During this era, a lot of people are going to reevaluate their relationships to money, work, food, comfort, housing, the body itself. You know, there's going to be larger conversations around economics and what's sustainable and burnout culture, agriculture, the true meaning of value. I think a lot of people will start to think about living simpler lives, co-housing, communities, things like that, where people band together and they live together and they create, they have farms and things like that, and they live in a more sustainable way. So all of these things over the next few years, we're starting to think about because we really see the necessity. And these patriarchal systems like AI is such a patriarchal system. And even more so, it's coming into Mother Nature and it's, laying its concrete and it's overusing resources. And so we are even more going to feel pulled and called to make sure that we don't continue this wounding of ourselves and as an extension of Mother Nature. Um, the deeper layer of Chiron in Taurus is really about learning that safety can't come from entirely from our external circumstances or possessions. It's about security coming from an inner sense of steadiness and self-trust. So personally, that is something that we're really needing to work on an individual level as a sense of safety. And then on the collective level, well, how do we make Earth a safe, livable, and sustainable place for all of us? June 21st is the summer solstice. The sun is going to be entering Cancer. This is when the energy heightens reflection around what's growing, what's flourishing, and what requires our care in order for the harvest to be bountiful in the summer. The sun entering Cancer shifts collective focus towards our homes, our feeling like we belong in our community, mothering, nourishment, our inner life, our emotions. It's really an opportunity, even though summer can feel very bustling, it's actually an opportunity to slow down and feel ourselves honestly. It reminds us that emotional intelligence is wisdom, and Cancer teaches us that strength is found through knowing how to care and be restful and receptive and to protect what matters the most. On June 28th, Mars is going to enter Gemini. Mars in Gemini, it could lead to a little bit of nervous system overload because it moves quickly, it thinks quickly, it speaks quickly. It's got 1,000 questions in its head. It's very curious. So conversations accelerate and our curiosity intensifies. And so we could feel very overstimulated if we're not providing that real grounding that we need and real embodiment that we need that only you can be doing for yourself. You can't be doing it from an app. You can't be doing it from, some external source. This is for us to be doing with ourselves. A sense of groundedness comes from our connection from us to us from within. So we need to really be tapping into that energy. I think the positive sides of Mars and Gemini, innovation, brainstorming, networking, socializing, being curious, writing, learning, teaching. This is a good time to take a class if you've been wanting to, or write the class that you've been wanting to write. It can also increase reactivity though, and scattered thinking, gossip, argumentativeness, superficiality. And of course, as I've mentioned, nervous system burnout if we're not grounding intentionally. So this is a chapter that we need to really pay attention to. Finally, we're going to end the month in a huge crescendo with Mercury in Cancer stationing retrograde at the 27th degree, and then the full moon in Capricorn, both those things happening on June 29th, and then Jupiter entering Leo on June 30th. These are big, big transits at the end of the month. The Mercury retrograde period, the degree of Cancer here is, it speaks to the ability to hold two truths. Two opposing ideas can be true at the same time. So that's something that we're going to be really incubating during this Mercury retrograde period. And we might see flashes of that coming up all month towards the retrograde period. But two beliefs, two ideas. We need to be asking ourselves, how do we serve the whole rather than giving into polarity? How can we help opposites find each other again so that each has what the other needs? And of course, in the world and society we're living in, how do we allow fanaticism within ourselves to give way to the greater good? So all questions that Mercury retrograde are going to prompt in us. We've got 3 weeks of Mercury retrograde before it goes direct. Then we'll go back over all the degrees. So this is a really important time to be thinking about, what's my cognitive distance around multiple avenues of thought? Can I hold two truths at the same time? And in what areas is life showing me that I need to hold opposites together with one another and find a way to create unity? The full moon in Capricorn is going to bring some of those career, money, stability, purpose issues to a head. Many people are in the middle of an initiation period right now, so their old channels of willing your way through life, they're not working. A new receptive way is opening. That's how we're sort of entering into this matriarchal energy of sharing and caring for ourselves and one another. But it's not opening without struggle, obviously. And the Capricorn full moon reminds us that sustainable success cannot be built through chronic self-abandonment. So we really need to be tuning into where our life work balance is out of whack, basically. There might be endings around outdated definitions of achievement or pressure to maintain systems that don't support your well-being anymore that you'll decide to be putting an end to at this full moon. Finally, the next day, Jupiter entering Leo is going to bring heart expansion and creative expression to the forefront. It's a very social time. It's going to be a great time for music and poetry. We've got, about 14 months of this energy, time to be brave and confident. And as this marks a big collective shift, stay tuned to my upcoming podcast nearing the end of the month for more on that. And there will also be one on Chiron and Taurus specifically, because these are big shifts that are going on, generational shifts. Well, Chiron for sure is, and Gemini and Jupiter is a big shift that we're going to be feeling for a while. So it's good to kind of look at it a little bit more intricately. So stay tuned for those podcasts coming in. June promises to be a month of emotional honesty, mental reorientation, and profound healing shifts. It's a month that's really asking us to confront illusion and to confront despair, and without surrendering into either, to hold ourselves proud and to be human and to be on this planet right now and to just simply do our best and show up. There are definitely themes around redefining safety and value and our identity wounds and opening the heart after pain and disappointment and learning to hold complexity. There these themes that are weaving all through June. The energy is going to feel emotionally intense at times, but beneath that intensity is an invitation towards greater consciousness and self-trust and emotional maturity. So, healing is not linear, and there are often periods of uncertainty that precede meaningful transformation. So it's not the time to shut down. Just because you're having a hard time doesn't mean that life's not worth it. Oftentimes, in my personal experience, those periods of deep breakdown were actually these profound breakthroughs that led me into another highly lucrative sometimes, or abundant or fulfilling period of my life. So don't retreat entirely into fear. Don't condemn the future. Stay present, ask better questions, be adaptable, and consciously choose the kind of future that you want to be creating. I'm Rebecca Conran. I'm a certified trauma-informed holistic health coach and astrologer and an energy healer and published writer. And I work with people all around the world in my holistic methods, basically helping people to realign mind, body, and spirit in a very frank and an understanding but compassionate way. I've been working since 2013 and in this capacity and supporting individuals in breaking generational patterns and just creating their lives that can be rooted in more clarity and self-trust. So tune into my website if you'd like to work one-on-one with me, www.rebeccaconran.com. It's linked in the show notes. I've got a few different offerings available there. And yeah, look forward to hearing from you, and I will speak to you and see you soon. Bye bye.